individual who called who was concerned about a relative who had made some comments about harming himself. They were concerned for his safety. The officer arrived at the address to obtain additional information. As the officer was on scene, the male who the relative had called about had arrived. He exited his vehicle. He was holding a firearm in his hand. The officer gave him verbal commands to drop the firearm. He did not comply. The officer continued to give him commands, and eventually the officer fired several shots, striking the male, and they immediately rendered aid to him, medical aid, and the male was eventually transported to Raleigh Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries.
Was the relative on the scene?
Yes.
And what kind of interaction did the relative have with the officer?
Meaning?
Well, is she screaming and yelling, or they're shooting at her cousin? I mean, what's going on?
No, it wasn't like that. It was more or less of trying to get the individual to drop his weapon. They were trying to convince him to drop the weapon.
And is this relative by marriage? Is it? Can you tell us who?
I'm not going to go into great detail about the relative at this point, though.
Did they live in the house together?
No.
How much did this gun look like a real gun?
It's very, very realistic. It was very realistic. It had the same weight of a real firearm. It had the same look of a real firearm. And in low light conditions or very well lit conditions, it would not have been known that it was not real.
Did he point it at officers at any point?
Yes.
And did he make any kind of threats? Did he say anything?
I'm not going to get into great detail about what he said, other than the fact that he did pose a direct and immediate threat to the officer at the time. The officer was unaware that the firearm was a replica. Based on the low light conditions, the officer took the action that was necessary to eliminate the threat.
Is the person being charged with anything, the male?
He will be charged with a crime of felony assault with a device similar to a firearm.
And can you explain the rationale behind that? Did he assault anyone, or is it just because he pointed it?
Just because he pointed it. That's a criminal charge in the Rhode Island statute that has a criminal penalty for someone who uses a replica firearm or something similar in the commission of a crime.
Just the act of pointing it is a threat?
Yes.
How many times was he shot? And do you know how many rounds the officer fired and how many struck the male?
It was several rounds, less than 5. I know that for certain, and I believe he was struck once or twice, and there was only one officer on scene.
And do you know how extensive his injuries were?
It doesn't appear to be serious. It does not appear to be life-threatening.
Do you know where he was hit? Where in his body he was struck?
I'm not going to mention that at this point.
So Officer Florio was the only officer there?
Yes, at that moment, yes.
Did he call for assistance when he saw the man with the...
Oh, absolutely, yes. He did, but it takes several minutes for the officers to arrive.
Were there any other people who witnessed the shooting?
Other than the relative, no.
But she saw it, or he saw the whole thing?
It appears so, yes.
Do you know? Can you tell us where the relative was during this, as this was going down?
They were outside the residence.
Is this thought to be a suicide by cop, an attempted attack?
I don't have that information. That's still being investigated. That's certainly a possibility, but we haven't made that conclusive determination as of yet.
Do your officers have body cameras? And if so, was this officer wearing one?
No, we do not employ body cameras.
Was it captured on camera from any neighbors, the house? Do you have video of it anywhere?
No, we do not. We did inquire. We do not have that.
Are there dash cameras on the vehicles?
No, we do not have dash cameras.
And so,